Many years ago, in the heart of a bustling English town whose name I've long since forgotten to protect the innocent and the guilty, I found myself slinging pints behind the bar of a lively pub called the Red Lion. It wasn't my first gig in the hospitality world, nor would it be my last, but it holds a special place in my memory for reasons that go beyond the frothy heads of ale and the endless clink of glasses. My friend Wayne was the manager there, a bloke I'd known since our school days. Wayne was one of those rare souls who could turn any rundown watering hole into a thriving hub of community and cheer. He'd managed 4 pubs in his career up to that point, and I'd worked in every single one of them. Loyalty, you see, or perhaps just a shared love for a good pint and a laugh. Wayne was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a mop of unruly brown hair that he never quite tamed, even on his best days. His laugh could fill a room, booming like thunder, and he had this uncanny ability to read people. He'd spot a troublemaker from across the bar before they'd even ordered their first drink. That's why his pubs were always busy, safe, welcoming, and full of life. The Red Lion was no exception. Nestled on a quiet side street off the main high road, it had that classic British pub charm. Dark wooden beams overhead, mismatched stools at the bar, and a fireplace that crackled warmly in the winter months. In the summer, the garden out back bloomed with hanging baskets and picnic tables, drawing in families and locals alike. I started working there part-time while I was between jobs, delivering ironmongery during the day, nuts, bolts, tools, you name it. Heavy lifting that built up my arms and back, which came in handy when dealing with rowdy patrons. Bar work was my escape, a chance to chat with folks from all walks of life, hear their stories, and pour them a bit of solace in liquid form. But it wasn't all rosy. Busy nights could turn chaotic, with orders flying in faster than you could pull a pint. And then there were the customers like Brad, the ones who made you question why you ever stepped foot behind the counter. Before I dive into Brad, though, let me tell you about Dennis. Dennis was one of the good ones, a retired gent in his late 70s who'd seen more of life than most. He had that old-school polish, always dressed in a crisp shirt and tie, even when he was sweeping the car park or tending to the garden. His face was weathered, lines etched deep from years of hard work, factory jobs, he once told me, back when manufacturing was king in these parts. Dennis had lost his wife a few years prior, and the pub became his second home. In exchange for a few free pints each week, he'd clean up the outdoor areas. He'd arrive early in the morning, broom in hand, whistling tunes from the war era. "Keeps me out of trouble," he'd say with a wink. Nice man, Dennis. The kind who'd share a story about his youth without expecting anything in return. The pub's garden was his pride and joy. It wasn't massive, just a patch of green with some benches and a few flower beds, but Dennis kept it spotless. He'd weed the borders, pick up litter from the night before, and even plant a few bulbs in the spring. On sunny days, you'd find him out there chatting with the punters, his tie loosened just a bit as he sipped his ale. Wayne appreciated him immensely. In fact, he often slipped Dennis an extra pint or two just for being a decent human being. Little did I know back then how Dennis would unwittingly become a key player in one of the most memorable nights of my bartending career. Now, every pub has its share of characters, but Brad was in a league of his own. He slithered into the Red Lion one rainy afternoon, and from that moment, he became a fixture we'd all rather forget. Short, stocky, with a perpetual smirk that made you want to wipe it off his face. His eyelids were always half closed, like he was sizing up the world through slits, and he had this oily way about him, leering at the female staff, making crude jokes that landed like lead balloons. Brad thought he was God's gift to the bar scene because he had a bit of money from his subcontracting gig with British Gas. Drove a transit van, parked it like he owned the street, and treated the bar staff like we were his personal servants. If you've ever worked in a pub, you know the type. The ones who snap their fingers for service, complain about the pour, and act like the world revolves around their next pint. Brad was that, amplified. On busy nights, when the bar was 3 deep and sweat was dripping down our backs, he'd lean over and demand, "Oi, mate, make it snappy. I've got places to be." Places to be. In a pub on a Friday night? Pull the other one. But Wayne, ever the diplomat, would smooth things over. "Ignore him," he'd mutter to me as he passed with a tray of empties. "He's harmless, just a prat." Harmless, maybe, but annoying as hell. Brad had a girlfriend back then, let's call her Lisa. She was a stunner, no doubt about it, long dark hair, sharp features, and a figure that turned heads. But she was mad as a badger, as the saying goes. Carried a carving knife in her handbag, she did. I learned that the hard way one night when she pulled it out to slice open a packet of crisps. "For protection," she said with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. From then on, I made damn sure not to upset her. Pour her drinks first, compliment her outfit. Whatever it took to keep that knife in the bag. One after-hours session stands out vividly, even after all these years. Wayne had a habit of letting the staff and a few trusted regulars stay back after closing. We'd lock the doors, dim the lights, and crack open a few bottles for ourselves. It was our way of unwinding, sharing stories from the night, and forgetting the chaos. Brad, being the persistent git he was, often weaseled his way into these lock-ins. That night, he was in rare form, regaling us with a tale that still makes me cringe. "So, get this," he slurred, his half-lidded eyes gleaming with mischief. "Me and Lisa, we're getting frisky the other night, right? She's got this toy, big one, mind you, and things get a bit enthusiastic." He paused for effect, taking a swig of his lager. We were all there, me, Wayne, Maria, Wayne's wife, a no-nonsense woman who ran the kitchen like a drill sergeant, and a couple of other regulars. No one really wanted to hear it, but Brad didn't care. Anyway, it slips in too far, yeah. Stuck up me arse like a cork in a bottle. Lisa's panicking, but she's got these long nails, fake ones, sharp as hell. Digs in there and yanks it out. Hurt like a bastard, but what a story, eh? The room went silent for a beat, then erupted in awkward laughter. Maria rolled her eyes and excused herself to the kitchen. Wayne shot me a look that said, "What a wanker." I just nodded, filing it away as one of those pub stories you wish you could unhear. 30 years on, and it still burned into my brain. That's Brad for you, oversharing, obnoxious, and utterly unforgettable. The pub's layout was straightforward but quirky, as many old buildings are. The main bar area led to a small hallway with doors, one to the private living quarters upstairs where Wayne and Maria lived, and another opposite that opened to a tiny parking space out back. That's where the bins were kept, along with my car on nights when I was working late. It was a convenient spot, shielded from the street, but it also made it a prime target for mischief. One lock-in night, I was the last to leave. The air was thick with the smell of stale beer and cigarette smoke, back when smoking indoors was still a thing. I'd had a couple of drinks myself, nothing excessive, just enough to take the edge off a long shift. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I froze. My car, a beat-up Ford Escort that had seen better days, was covered in empty cardboard boxes. 8 or 9 of them, stacked haphazardly on the roof, bonnet, and boot. They were the kind we used for deliveries, beer crates, crisp boxes, that sort of thing. No damage, just a silly prank. I sighed, stacked them back by the bins, and drove home thinking, some dickhead having a laugh. I forgot about it until the following weekend. Brad was at the bar, nursing his usual pint of bitter, when he leaned in with that smirk. "Hey, mate, get your car out all right the other night?" I raised an eyebrow. Why do you ask? He chuckled, his voice dripping with smugness. Well, you looked boxed into me. The pun hit like a wet sponge. So it was him. I just stared, shook my head, and turned away, ignoring him for the rest of the night. Petty, sure, but what else could I do? Confront him? Nah, not worth the hassle. Life at the pub rolled on. Busy weekends, quiet weekdays. I'd chat with Dennis about his war stories. He'd been in the RAF, fixing planes during the tail end of the conflict. Bloody cold up north, he'd say, his eyes distant. Wayne and I would share laughs over inventory, counting bottles and arguing about football. Maria kept the kitchen humming, dishing out hearty pub grub like shepherd's pie and fish and chips. And Brad? He kept coming, kept leering, kept being Brad. Weeks turned into months, I can't recall exactly how many. The pranks had faded from my mind, replaced by the daily grind. Another lock-in, another late night. This time, when I stepped out to my car, I was greeted by a mess of carrot and potato peelings scattered across the bonnet, roof, and windscreen. Sticky, wet, and reeking of kitchen waste. Whoever did this had rummaged deep into the bins to fish them out, dedicated, I'll give them that. I banged on the door, and Maria answered, dustpan and brush in hand. What the hell? She exclaimed, surveying the scene. Who would do this? We cleaned it up together, her muttering under her breath about childish idiots. Later, I heard she'd cornered Brad about it. He just laughed, denying nothing but admitting everything with that grin. No proof, but I knew. Brad had stayed behind again that night. It was his style, petty, messy, attention-seeking. I stewed on it, but life moved on. The pub was my sanctuary, despite the Brads of the world. I'd arrive for my shifts, tie on my apron, and dive into the rhythm, pull pint, chat, wipe counter, repeat. On slow nights, I'd help Dennis with the garden, learning bits about horticulture I never thought I'd need. Plant marigolds to keep the bugs away, he'd advise, his hands soil-stained but steady. August bank holiday weekend arrived like a gift from the gods. For once, the UK weather cooperated. Blue skies, warm sun, not a cloud in sight. The pub was heaving from open to close. People spilled into the garden, kids running about, adults nursing ciders and lagers. Behind the bar, it was hell. I started at 2 p.m. and wouldn't finish until 11 p.m., with barely a break. Sweat poured down my face as I pulled pint after pint, the heat from the crowd turning the place into a sauna. Wayne was in his element, barking orders with a smile. Maria shuttled food from the kitchen, her face flushed but determined. Dennis was out front, picking up empties and chatting with families. And Brad? He was there, of course, holding court at his usual stool, getting progressively drunker and more obnoxious. Another one, quick, he'd slur, ignoring the cue. By closing time, I was knackered. My feet ached, my shirt clung to my back. We herded the last punters out, locked up, and collapsed into chairs for the lock-in. A few regulars stayed. Old-timers nursing whiskeys, a couple of staff unwinding with gin and tonics. Brad was there, loud as ever, telling another crude story that no one wanted to hear. Upstairs, Wayne and Maria had a Staffordshire Bull Terrier named Red. A stocky, affectionate beast with a brindle coat and a tongue that lolled out like a pink ribbon. Red had free rein on the flat roof above the toilets, a makeshift dog park where he could run and do his business. And boy, could he produce. In a week, Red's output rivaled the entire House of Commons in sheer volume. Maria scooped it up weekly, bagging it for disposal. That day, she'd left 2 carrier bags of it by the bins, ready to go out later. As the night wound down, I was the last to leave again. Stepping out, I noticed my nearside front tire was nearly flat. Cursing, I called Wayne over. He inspected it, shaking his head. Bloody hell, mate. I was livid. Boxes? Fine. Peelings? Annoying. But a flat tire after a grueling shift? That crossed a line. My eyes landed on those 2 bags of red scrap. Brad's flat was just up the road in a building called the Castle, a posh name for a block of flats with a residence car park. He parked his transit van there, proud as punch. I looked at Wayne. No, he said, reading my mind. What are you thinking? Fuck him, I replied, anger boiling over. He's a cunt. I grabbed the bags and marched up the road, Wayne trailing behind, trying to talk me out of it. The car park was quiet under the streetlights. There sat the van, gleaming white with British Gas logos. I held the first bag by the bottom and smeared its contents across the windscreen, thick, stinking sludge that stuck like glue. What fell, I shoved into the air intake vents. The bag, I left draped over. The second bag went behind the door handles, over the rear windows. I tossed it on top for good measure. We walked back, Wayne now laughing despite himself. You're mad, he said. I was still fuming, but a spark of satisfaction flickered. Home, I crashed into bed, the adrenaline fading into sleep. Sunday morning, I got the tire inflated at a garage and headed to the pub for a casual drink. Ready for Brad if he showed, 8 inches taller and ironmongery strong, I could have handled him. But he didn't appear. Wayne pulled me aside, grinning. You'll love this. Dennis cleans the Castle's car park too. Found Brad's van this morning, covered in dog shit. Cleaned it all off, bless him. Dennis had no idea. Couldn't understand why anyone would do that to such a nice man, Wayne quoted. I was gutted. All that effort, and Dennis undid it unwittingly. My only consolation, those air intakes. No way he got it all out. Hopefully, the van stank for weeks when the fans kicked in. I felt bad for Dennis, though. Bought him a few pints over the next weeks, listening to his stories with extra attentiveness. He passed last year, I saw it on Facebook. To his dying day, he never knew. And the real kicker? That tire had picked up a nail. No one let it down. It was just bad luck. All that rage, that revenge, for nothing. Life's funny like that, innit? Looking back, that summer at the Red Lion shaped me in ways I didn't expect. Wayne's still managing pubs, last I heard. Maria's probably still ruling the kitchen. Brad? Who knows? Probably still being a prat somewhere. Dennis, rest his soul, was the true hero, unwittingly saving the day with his broom and his kindness. Pub life teaches you patience, humor, and a bit of forgiveness. Even for the Brads. But if I could go back, I'd still smear that crap. Some lessons are worth the stink.